Hello, and welcome to my EDC 250 Lesson Planning Screencast by Savannah Diaz. First, we will focus on the area of reading. Struggling to read. Reading is arguably the most important skill set that a student can learn, as this is used in every aspect of life. 1 in 5 students are likely to struggle with reading, with 80% of students that are identified as LD having a struggle with reading. Students that have a struggle with reading often develop emotional overlay of failure syndrome, where this constant failure can manifest itself in inappropriate behaviors. The struggling reader. Common characteristics of the struggling reader is delayed speech, the student is difficult to understand, and the student will have below average fine motor skills. A balanced literacy program. A balanced literacy program contains many best practices in order to reach all students. These best practices can include instruction, group practice, guided practice, opportunities for learning and independence, and ongoing feedback and diagnosis. Phonetic awareness. Phonetic awareness is the process of understanding how individual sounds can be manipulated in order to create language. This includes the isolation of sounds that can assist in the spelling and writing. Phonetic awareness is vital for students to sound out words, count syllables, and learn new words. Reading to students with LD. Reading to students with LD and having a student with LD read to you is a multi-step process. The first step in this process is to convince the student that they will be able to read for you, as this can be a huge motivator. Step 2 is to determine a reward system for the student. Number 3 is to determine the knowledge and word recognition of a student, and this can be done with simple assignments, and that includes number 4. Number 5 is to determine if a student can blend sounds by using nonsense words to see if a student can mock your wording, though they've never heard the word before. Number 6, you will want to listen to a student read at his or her own pace. Number 7, you will analyze this data, and number 8, you will set goals for the student's learning. Word walls. Word walls are a visual index and a motivator for students. Word walls create a word inventory of all the words that have been learned in the school year. This begins with basic words such as at or an, and connect with complex words such as after, could, or down. Spelling strategies. A very common spelling strategy is to use word clumps, and this uses parts of a word that a student knows in order to make learning new words easier. You can take a row of ow or a row of at and letter by letter add new words by adding a B or a C to make bow or cow. And each letter will have its own list. The emerging reader. The emerging reader usually needs about 30 minutes of daily practice. This 30 minutes is usually broken up into 3 10-minute segments. These segments should focus on fluency, the concept of a silent E and long sounds, slowly blending your words, and focus highly on phonetics. Here we see a reading lesson plan, by the end of which students will be able to demonstrate a knowledge of letter-sound correspondence by producing the primary sound of each letter as mandated by the Common Core Standard RFK3, Phonetics and Word Recognition. In this lesson, they will learn the letter A and the sound ah. By this time, students are able to recite the ABCs. The way in which you will do this is by first showing students a short video that outlines the sound of each letter. Then, using an EMO, you will show pictures of animals and objects, identifying pictures that begin with the ah sound, spell the words underneath, and underline the A, explaining that A makes the sound ah. While doing this, you will exaggerate all wording while using A and use the blackboard to demonstrate words with an ah sound. You will then have students work independently and in groups to create different words that have the ah sound. For differentiated instruction, at Level 1, students can watch another video to explain further. At Level 2, in a group, students will draw pictures of things that start with the ah sound. And in Level 3, Students will individually listen to the sound on video while working. Next, we'll discuss written expression. Writing, spelling, and speaking. Writing, spelling, and speaking all intermingle to create the understanding of language. Speech is the framework of both spelling and writing, and therefore this is the first thing you will want to evaluate. There are many strategies to overcome difficulties in speaking, spelling, and writing. This is very common with students with dyslexia, who often go on to be great spellers and great writers. This can also be for students who have trouble with fluency or simply do not speak. This has no bearing on the fact that they will still be able to spell and write. Assisting with spelling. The most common way to assist with spelling is by using tracing and having a student copy words, as well as printing words and clumping sounds. Spelling methods. Number 1, introduce the word that you would like the students to spell. Number 2, say the word, then repeat the word, spell the word and have the student repeat. When repeating, you will want to exaggerate your mouth so that the student can see each sound that you're making. You will want the student to copy you in this as well as in writing down the word. Next, you will use guided repetition, and you will write and speak at the same time. That is, if you are teaching the word the, you will write the letters th as the sound th is coming out of your mouth. Number 9, you will delete the senses by having the student close their eyes and cover their ears as they spell the word out. And number 10, you will do a trial test of having the student spell your words. Teaching handwriting. The most common way to teach handwriting is to use tracers that can help a student develop their fine motor skills. It often helps if, while tracing, the teacher goes around and checks that all students are holding their pencils properly. When tracing and teaching handwriting, you will want to emphasize the shape and the fluency of the letters. And if the student still has problem with handwriting by secondary education, you can teach coping skills, such as typing notes and assignments. Mechanisms for writing for older students. In order to teach a student the mechanics of writing, you will implement daily practice time and provide frequent feedback. You will want to have students proofread all of their work, and to do this you will want to provide proofreading time and have students switch work with one another. You will have students learn to analyze text by talking to the text and teach parts of a paragraph such as transition wording. Here we see a writing lesson plan that has to do with transition wording and creating a paragraph. This is mandated with the Common Core Standard W64. And by this time, students should be able to write clear and coherent sentences. And by the end of this lesson, they will be able to create a clear and coherent paragraph. The anticipatory set will be a daily journal entry, while in order to do this, you will place a topic on the board and have students create information recorded on the board and have them create sentences from said information. Next, the instructor will create a paragraph from these sentences in order to model for the students how to create a proper paragraph. For guided paragraph, they will give the topic of winter on the board. Students will again give information. The students will again create sentences, and now the students will collaboratively put the sentences together to create a paragraph, while the instructor offers instruction throughout. In order to check understandings, the students will be given a worksheet with a topic, sentences, and transition words prepared. The students will create a paragraph from the banks. For differentiated instruction, there will be a YouTube video about paragraph construction available. In Level 2, Station will have a sentence and transition word cutouts in bags organized by topics, and the students can create paragraphs from said cutouts. In Level 3, the student can be given an example of a proper paragraph about a dog. Next, the student can play the YouTube video and recreate this paragraph, only making it about a cat. Lastly, we will discuss mathematics. Lack of readiness. Lack of readiness is a common problem in mathematics, and this means that a student is not up to grade level on their mathematics. This often happens when students come with different experiences into the school world. Some students already know how to count, while some do not recognize any numbers. And it is an instructor's job to make sure that they can reach all students at all skill levels and still create progress for every student. Visual perceptual deficits. Visual perceptual deficits are common among students, and they can be things such as number reversal, the grasping of the word group or set. A student may not be able to mentally count in their head, or form shapes, or put shapes together. And it is also very common that students will not be able to create columns, and some students often need to use graph paper in order to make the lines. Other common deficits. Other common deficits can be spatial deficits, such as understanding the concepts of over and under, or more or less, and overall hierarchical reasoning. The other common deficit is in memory. Some may need a calculator, as short-term memory just may not be there, and they can use other assistive technologies such as a multiplication chart. And it's very important that instead of teaching students how to memorize, students are taught how to learn. The purpose of assessments. The purpose of assessments in mathematics and all subjects are to demonstrate understanding, gauge overall understanding of a class, show individual strengths and weaknesses, class-wide strengths and weaknesses, and show what the instructor needs to provide more instruction upon. Levels of understanding. There are 3 levels of understanding, the first being concrete, and this is a physical understanding of things. This will be something like looking at your finger and saying 1. Next is representational, and this is when you can look at pictures and objects and see them as representations, such as seeing dots as representations of numbers, or seeing tallies with a line through as a representation of 5. Lastly is abstract, and this is when you can manipulate concepts without a pen and paper. This is things like doing addition in your head, subtraction in your head, and anything else without using a calculator or any other assistive technology. Here we see a mathematics lesson, after which students will be able to understand the relationship between numbers and quantities up to 10, as mandated by the Common Core Standards KCCB 4, Counting Chordality. Students by this time can recognize numbers 1 through 10, and as an anticipatory set will be shown a short animated YouTube video that shows how 1 can be represented with a dot, 2 can be represented with 2 dots, and so on. In order to teach this lesson, you will need to do an on-board lecture that shows a dot grid as it corresponds to the numbers 1 through 10. You will show the number correspondence by placing large blocks on the table in correspondence through 1 through 10. For guided practice, you will have a group guided worksheet with numbers and cubes using the EMO. Number 6, you will check for understanding by using worksheets in which the students will write numbers of dots on their page and must be completed with 80% accuracy. For independent practices, students will complete a worksheet that contains a partially completed graph of numbers 1 through 10 and their relating dot grids. Students will be able to complete the missing portions of their worksheet with an 80% accuracy. For closure, if a majority of students show understanding at 80%, you will introduce the idea that all numbers, including 10 through 15, can be shown as dots or other objects. For differentiated learning, at level 1, you will give additional examples and show with objects. At level 2, you will provide the student with cubes. And at level 3, provide the student the video and cubes. And that is my EDC 250 lesson plan screencast. Thank you.